Today we're gonna blast through a lot of stuff. So this is all gonna be just very tactical stuff that you hopefully can use in your business.
Problems and solutions that we see.
Problems and solutions and novations, because they are among the easiest of deals to go sideways. So anybody that's done that, I think, can attest to that. So my name is David Olds. I'm the co-founder and owner of ezREIclosings. We're just a nationwide transactions company. Hannah has been with us since the beginning. She was actually a dispositions manager way back in the day when we were actually wholesaling. And the reason I brought her on is she has handled more novations than anybody I know, probably more than most of the people in your group put together. She has done a ton of these, so she can really get into the nitty-gritty and talk about not just novations, but the retail buyer program and all of the other ones. They're all basically the same with a few minor changes. So that's kind of who we are. Yeah, our goals for today, I want to, like with anything, I always want to tell you where we're heading. We want to give you a little foundation of novations. For those of you who don't know, I think most of you do, but just in case, we're going to talk about some problems and the solutions, like the real solutions that you can put into place. Hannah's got a couple of case studies here, and ultimately how to simplify all of the madness, right? Because as investors, we're all out there. It feels like we're juggling literally 1,000 flaming bowling pins at a time. And how can we, through some good systems and processes, kind of limit that so that we can, as CEOs and owners in our business, really focus on the things that matter and move the needle. And then at the end, we have a pretty hard out about 55 minutes at the end of this, because I have to go to another presentation, but I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for Q&A for you guys. So if that's good, let's do it. As we're going along, throw your questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring that, and I want to make sure that we answer every single question before we go today. You're in.
Yeah.
Me? Cool. So novation, I think everybody knows this, but let's just in case they don't, what is a novation? It's a little bit different than an assignment, but it's a replacement of contract. I'm going to go under contract with the seller. That contract is between her and I, or him and I, and then I'm going to go find a new buyer, and we're going to create a new contract where I am not on that contract. It's between the seller and the new buyer, and there are some very important nuances there that you have to understand. Why we use novations. We use novations, I think everybody realizes this, so that we can sell to retail buyers. However, once we remove ourselves off of that contract, we have to put some things in place to protect us and our interest in all of the work that we're doing to make this thing come to a close. So novation, replacement of contract.
Yeah, so the first and probably the number one problem that we see happen is people incorrectly using their authorization attorney-in-fact document. It's not usually a lack of resources. All the people here, you guys are in a great coaching group that teaches you how to do this. It's a lot of times it's just that piece hasn't clicked. How am I using that properly, and what am I using it for? So the number one thing that I hear from people is, oh, my power of attorney. It's not a power of attorney. This authorization form that you have with the seller to sign an agreement on their behalf, to list the property on their behalf, is not the same as a power of attorney. An attorney, in fact, is limited. It's deal specific. It's signing authority for that deal. Power of attorney is sweeping control. The reason people mix these up is because technically, from a legal standpoint, the term attorney in fact is referring to the person who's acting as power of attorney. If you look at that document that you guys use for this, that we call the AIF, it's not actually called that. It just says authorization to sign listing docs and offers. So misusing that term when talking to agents, when talking to title companies, can cause a lot of questions, because power of attorneys are way more strict than attorney in facts. And so if they hear, oh, a power of attorney, they're going to start asking for things that don't exist.
One thing too, was we own a title company operating in 8 states or 7 states, whatever it is. Title companies don't love powers of attorney, right? That's why there's always so much pushback whenever you go to your title agent and say, yeah, I have a POA for this person. Understand a title company's job is real. They want to insure the property, but they are taking risk. They are backing this transaction. So whenever there's a POA in place, the title company immediately is thinking, why the fuck is Mrs. Smith not here? What is going on that she's not showing up? Because is this fraud? Because if it is, they're backing your $400,000 deal and issuing a title policy, right? So POAs, they don't love them. That's why they always want to review them in advance, and they want them to be as tight and specific as possible. They don't love those broad reaching, you know.
I just like to start with clarifying that, because people use them interchangeably. So I want to talk a little bit about the attorney-in-fact document, the execution of it with the seller. a common mistake I see is that people put that the seller is granting specific authority to an entity. And it is important to list your entity because that's who ultimately gets paid at the closing, not you as an individual. But something that we go over quite often with our attorney is an entity is not a signer. An individual or managing partner of an entity is a signer for their entity. So and some people have gotten away with, doing their attorney-in-fact document and just listing their company name here. I have personally seen a lot of pushback from lenders and title companies on this specifically. So I always suggest that it's best to put your name of your entity name. So in this case, David Olds of NPL Investments is the one the seller is giving authority to sign the document on their behalf.
Yeah, it's a simple thing. Let's do stuff right, because things are never a problem until they're a problem, and when they're a problem, it's usually settled in court. So let's just do it right from the first time and try to
move on with it.
move on safely, right?
We do it the same every time.
We want everybody to stay out of trouble.
Yeah. In that as well, we have found that sometimes in the attorney-in-fact, it says what the investor can do on the seller's behalf. You can sign listing docs, you can do this, but it doesn't always include what you cannot do.
And that's a place where when you get a bad or a title agent or attorney that really wants to fight something, or you have a seller who wants to dig in, you have to say what you can do and can't do.
You can't just say what you can do. I mean, you can. You'll probably get away with it. I've seen many attorney-in-facts that don't say what it excludes that you can do, but less conversation trying to clarify that saves you time. Might as well just put it in there from the get-go. So that is something that we found a couple of years ago and implemented into our attorney-in-fact that's helped alleviate some of that confusion. Another thing is that attorney-in-fact verbiage needs to be on a page that can be separated from the rest of your initial PSA with the seller. The lender's going to need to see that document verifying that you have the authority to sign for them. They are going to the agent is going to need to see that when they're sending out the contract for signature, but you don't necessarily want them to be privy to all the information on your underlying PSA with the seller. Right. You can have it all as like one document signing package. Just make sure you're not like trying to fit it in there as a sneaky term, and you're actually having it as a clear, separate form.
And guys, the real life examples that we're giving you here, we've done over 8,000 transactions, and 45% of them were novations. So I don't know, somebody can do the math. That's a lot. It's thousands and thousands of these have gone through our office. So we're trying to help you and tell you put this stuff in, because we've seen it blow up deals, $100,000 deals, things like this have killed.
There's a lot of right ways to do this. I'm not necessarily saying if you aren't doing these things that it's wrong, but implementing some of these things helps ensure that you don't have headaches down the road, that you're not getting that pushback and wasting your time spinning your wheels.
Yeah, we've talked to, had major coaches as clients and told them a couple of times, hey, this is a problem in your contract, this is a problem in your contract, there's a problem in your contract.
and then
it's a problem. And then it's $60,000 and everybody's upset. So
and then in regards to the attorney-in-fact, I also see people misuse this when they go to sign their offer with the buyer. It sounds really simple, but when you have an assignment, you've got your A to B agreement and your B to C agreement. That's not how it works in a novation. You've got your A to B agreement, and then you have your A to C agreement, right? The seller to the buyer, with you as the investor as the signer for the seller. So that contract between the seller and the buyer that replaces the underlying PSA is between the seller and the buyer, but you as the investor are the signer. You're signing, David Olds as attorney-in-fact for Shirley Smith. So those are probably the three common things I see misused. Attorney-in-fact misusing the attorney-in-fact is the number one problem I see people have in novations, hands down. And you guys have all these tools. You guys are taught how to do this correctly. Wonderful, wonderful coaching on novations. Sometimes it's just a matter of flipping the gear from assignment terminology to novation terminology and how those things click together in the head.
A couple things I definitely want us to talk about. Maybe Hannah prepared these slides, so she knows what the next slide is. I'm just here for color commentary. But talking about using, should the AIF be in a separate document? Maybe we can kind of go through that, like the document structure, because people do sometimes switch from novation to assignment to novation, that type of stuff. So
yeah, and I see that happen a lot. Having that attorney-in-fact page be able to be separated from the rest of the contract allows for transparency to the buyer side without over disclosure of information, which we'll get into in some of the later slides, but also, it allows you to utilize that initial contract with the seller if you need to do it as a wholesale instead and not use the attorney in fact at all. People do that all the time, pivoting, exit strategies as things go.
So you just mean, quick question, what's up, David?
Hey, man.
Thank you guys for coming on.
bet.
You just mean the, when you're initially getting that package of documents to the closing attorney, you don't want it connected in the same PDF? Is that all you're saying?
Yeah, well, yes, they can be in the same PDF. It really depends on which kind of closing attorney you're using and at what point you're providing that. But usually the buyer's agent and their lender are going to need to see that document if you've used it to sign on the seller's behalf on the buyer's contract. But you don't need to disclose the rest of your underlying PSA with the seller to the buyer's lender, because that's when they start asking questions and thinking it's an assignment when it's not. So just having it separate helps prevent, we're acting like the funnel. Which part of this document goes to this person and which part of it goes to this person?
That's always been a thing that has blown up a ton of deals, exactly what she's saying. I get it. I'm a simple and scalable guy. Let me jam all this shit into one contract because it's going to make my life easier and it's one DocuSign. However, later down the road, these are the things that torpedo your deal.
And the paperwork that is provided with the cartel, you guys, it's already a separate page. So the way that it's already laid out and the method you guys are using is correct. I have just seen investors go back and try to redo the paperwork and jam it in there somewhere else. And it's just not necessary. The way that it's already presented to you guys with the coaching program is exactly how it should be done already.
All right, back to me. All right, my goodness. Incorrect title company. Guys, I get messages every single week from big coaching gurus out there and then students who follow us talking about, hey, I've got this novation and it's about to be blown up by this title company. So important to make sure you're picking, and we've all heard this, right, an investor-friendly title company, but that means a lot of different things to a lot of people. Hannah and I were talking about this the other day. If you call up a title company and say, hey, are you investor-friendly? To the girl answering the phone, she could be like, yeah, we work with builders who buy lots and build houses. He's an investor. Yeah. And then the other thing is they're always going to say, send your contracts. They're not filtering what's coming in. So, choosing the wrong title company, 100% the biggest thing that will kill your deal. When we get one of our clients, we have hundreds of clients who say, oh, I went with the seller's title company, or, the buyer's golf buddy is going to do this closing. 50-50 that shit closes. I'm telling you, literally 50-50. We've done the math on it. Just the odds are just not in your favor. Not all title companies are created equal. Just because someone will do an assignment doesn't mean they'll do a novation or a sub 2 or an FHA or whatever it is. We work, we have our own in-house title company, but in those other states, we have over 800 title companies that we're partnered with because, there are all these different types of deals in all of the different states, and we want to make sure we're always placing it right with the right person. There is no one title company solution for the entire country.
We tried that.
We've tried it. I promise you guys. We do a lot of deals. There's no one person that is licensed in all 50 states, not even First American Title Insurance Company, which is why so many people come to us as a TC, because they just want one person to send that deal to and let the TC put it in the right place. So investor friendly. Yeah, they will all take your deal and just say, yeah, send it over. And here's the problem with a novation. Here's one of the things that screws these things up is you're dealing with retail people, right? We're not dealing with investors. If Brandon's buying my deal and I got to change title companies, it's not the biggest deal. He gets it. He's a rehabber. He knows I'm wholesaling. Even if I got to give him $500 off to sign the paper, the amendment, great, he'll do it. But retail people are different, right? You're dealing with a home buyer, right? They're going to live in this place, and they've got some agent right off the street who doesn't know jack shit about investors. And the minute the wrong paperwork goes to a mortgage company or to their title company, man, red flags go up, and you can't put that genie back in the bottle because they're immediately thinking it's a scam, right? Guys, I've seen this over and over and over hundreds of times. Just me. I don't even know what our 25 coordinators have seen, but just pick the right title company or get a TC that understands how to do that. Cool. Incorrect title company. Be nice to your title agents. My goodness, sometimes, man, even our clients, some of them can be dickheads sometimes. Understand what the title company's role is here. You're asking them to not only just do the deal, it's not just paperwork, but when somebody issues title insurance, like when our company issues title insurance, we're saying we are standing behind this deal, right? So sometimes we do have questions. Sometimes we don't want to, go with this POA. Sometimes we want a little bit of extra information, and that because we're guaranteeing this deal. I'm going on the hook, right? I will tell you on a $400,000 deal, I may get, maybe it's an $1,800 title policy. Like I'm getting like $700. So when this deal goes south in 2 years and somebody's getting sued, I got $700 and I'm on the hook for 60% of this $400,000. That's why title companies do that, right? So be nice to your title agents.
They can also help save your deals.
They will
if
also,
you have good relationships with them, they're more likely to listen to you when you need something.
Right. We talked about the documents, splitting them up, making sure the right documents go in. When we are submitting a novation on behalf of one of our clients, we don't even submit the AB, do we?
Yeah, it depends on whether or not like they're opening title before they have a buyer in place or not. A lot of people wait till they have a buyer in place just because it's a retail buyer. So a lot of times we just send in the contract with the buyer and that authorization form. Yeah. The underlying PSA is there for reference as to how much the seller's walking away with. It's there in case additional legal action has to be taken or the deal has to pivot. And that novation agreement is just legal protection, like a hold harmless for you and the seller if something does go sideways legally. Those aren't necessarily pertaining to the closing. So when we talked about at the beginning, this is a replacement of contract. That contract with the buyer is the only contract that's being used to close on. The underlying contract with the seller is just there for reference at that point. It's been replaced.
So there's a problem. One, you're at the wrong title company. You're at somebody's brother's girlfriend's, the title agent. You get all of these contracts. Your VA or whoever you're using or your dispo person just sends all these contracts. Sometimes it will work, but you're literally playing roulette with your deals on whether or not it's going to go through. So, make sure you have the right title company, make sure you're sending them the right documents. Another thing that we see all the time is not keeping control of the title company. You as the investor, us as the transaction coordinator, like control is the name of the game for us, right? We want to be putting this at the right title company. If Ryan is our client, and he comes to us and says, hey, I've got this deal at this title company, we will call and vet that title company. But ultimately, we want to make sure, this title company can do it. Hannah's the queen of doing this. Show me that you've done this deal. Send me a HUD with the info blacked out. I want to know that you really can do this. Like we've got 2 or 3 pages of questions for title companies when we onboard a new title company to make sure that they can get this deal. Because for me, my responsibility is to Ryan to make sure that this deal is going to close. So for us, we take that kind of seriously. So the other thing is, you put this on MLS and you get some rando, buyer's agent that comes in and they want to use their title company.
That's normal on a retail deal, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like it's that uncommon. How do we navigate that? How do we stay ahead of that?
So the way that we came up with this, and this has worked time and time and time again for our clients, is you put in your listing agreement that says, hey, all accepted offers will close at ezREIclosing Solutions. Boom, that's it.
And you can't force them, but you can. That's giving them a better idea that before they go to make their offer, they'll have a better chance of getting it accepted if they go ahead and list that title company as the title company. Yeah. If they don't, you can always get into counter offers and negotiations, or at that point call your TC and say, hey, I'm not getting anywhere. Can you vet this title company
before I accept it?
Before you accept the offer, because you don't want to accept an offer if you don't know the title company that's listed is willing to close it or protect your interest.
Does that make sense? Has anybody had that problem before? Where you're doing a novation and then some dopey title company shits on your deal and, then it goes sideways? There's 40 people? 40 times. Yeah, 40 people in here. Like, guys, we get these calls. I get Facebook messages. I got one today from a big coach. Hey, I don't know what to do here. Well, let's see if we can fix it, but here's how you fix it going forward. And then again, we talked about, vetting them, walking through and making sure that, they can actually do this type of deal, because this is big money, man. Novations are fucking great. We love them because the spreads are so good, right? Take the steps on the front side, or have somebody do it for you who's already done that.
Cool. So next problem is I usually run into is people have a hard time finding the right agent, not knowing which kind of agent to use, not really understanding the formal listing process. Sometimes that happens when people have gone from, doing off-market assignment deals for so long that then they go to list and I've never listed a property before. I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know, what their role is and how to explain my role to them. Lack of current underlying relationships. And this is where it becomes really important to know your market and know how to have a conversation with an agent with confidence.
Yeah, I think I'm in your guys' chat. The thing that I see the most is who's a good Novations agent in Poughkeepsie or about flat fees. What, Hannah, because you've done so many of these dealing with our clients, the most successful clients, are they using more flat fee or more like individual
Oh,
agents?
I was about to get into that.
Oh,
Here we
look at
go.
that. It's like I'm teeing you up.
There are pros and cons to both, right? So, a flat fee agent is always going to be cheaper. They're typically going to have less market knowledge. They're going to list it at the price that you tell them to list it at. And there's going to end up being more hands-on work required by your team in regards to property access and showings and things like that. A flat fee agent is really just there to list. Sometimes people do novations and there are smaller spreads. That's something we'll talk about in this presentation too, just like factoring in the figures. You should still be determining, okay, I think it's going to sell for this price, right? You guys are good at underwriting your deals. That's why you're doing them. But there are going to be times where you might have a smaller spread and it might feel more beneficial for you to have the flat fee agent and do a little bit more work on your end. Now, local agents are a little bit more expensive. They are typically get paid their 3% commission, sometimes 2.5%. I do hear a lot of people be like, well, I'm trying to get a lower fee from my agent. Dude, those agents are doing more for you on a novation than they would be doing listing a retail deal. They deserve to be paid the full amount that they normally get paid. And they have more market knowledge. I was talking to a listing agent recently who had taken on a listing just about an hour away from where I live, and that's where she lives. And it had previously been listed by an agent that lived where I'm at, an hour outside of where that house was, and he had it listed for 6 months and couldn't sell it. She listed it and it sold within a day because she knew the market, she knew the neighborhood, she knew what was going on. So the market knowledge from a local agent is great, and it usually means there's a little bit less hands-on work required by your team. That agent's going to go out and get photos. They're going to stage it. They're going to get a 3D walkthrough. They're going to handle the lockbox and the showings for you. So there is no right or wrong answer to this. It comes down to your spread and the amount of work that you want to do. I personally love local agents, and I think it's great to build relationships with them. But at the end of the day, it also comes down to how much you disclose to them. There are agents out there that don't understand novations, and really all the agent needs to know, if you're using a local agent, is the same thing the flat fee agent needs to know, right? You have the authorization to list on the seller's behalf. You're the seller's point of contact. You're the seller's authorized signer. They don't necessarily need this whole lowdown of like how novations work. That's when you start getting into, oh, I provided them my contract with the seller and they don't know they're not supposed to send that to somebody else. And then they do, and it kills your deal. So keeping it simple, hey, Mr. Listing Agent, the seller has given me authority to do this, that, and the other. Here's the document that proves that. Can we get this listed? I'm the point of contact. Easy peasy.
I get it. And there are going to be some states that have gotten a little stricter and they do actually want a POA. But in general, if you can get by with the AIF, it's much cleaner. I can tell you when I was rehabbing a lot a couple of years ago, man, people would ask me, why don't you get your license? I can make another 3%. I don't want to fucking make another 3%. I want to go on to my next deal. I don't want to be dicking around doing the realtor's job. I don't want my dispo person getting off the phones to do the dispo person's job. I always just calculated it in. I figure it's going to cost me 10% to sell. That includes 6% for the agents. Man, I want the best agent there is. I did a deal down in Lafayette, Georgia, which is 30 minutes south of here. I was listing it with the #1 agent in Chattanooga. He could not sell the deal down there because he wasn't local. He didn't understand. He didn't know who to call. We put it with a local agent down there. Boom, sold. I've got 2 lots I'm selling in Ocala right now. I went into PropStream, looked at recent sales, went a block over, found that agent. He sold my 2 lots for like 4 times the offers I was getting because he knew exactly which builders to call. That's the difference between local agents. I get, man, a lot of people, they want flat fee because they think they can avoid talking to the agents, but that's where the money's at.
And this matters because we'll get into a couple case studies where I'll show you some examples of where like not having the right agent or having the right conversation with the agent actually caused problems in a deal. Yeah. So that becomes, your thing to disclose.
So yeah, not understanding your spread or your buyer's offer. I feel like this is pretty, you guys are going to get this, but yeah, in a Novation, we're promising the seller basically a net amount. Everything above that is ours, but shit comes out of there, right? The agent fees, the repairs, the gutter, the new refrigerator, so you and your team have to understand. I feel like this is like.
Nick gives them
this-
lots of stuff to do that.
Yeah, this is like Forrest Gump stupid, but I just want, just so people understand your profit is, comes out of that kind of bucket. So just really understanding, hey, this thing's going to cost me 10% to sell, not 10% of my profit, 10% of the $300,000, right? Or whatever that is. So yeah, just always make sure that you understand that, and yeah, making sure that you factor in the repairs and payoffs and liens, right? Does the seller understand that they are going to have to pay off liens? I had a kid call me this morning, and I had a 40-minute call with him because the house burned down, but it had solar panels. But now the solar panels were in place for 4 days before the house burned down. They think maybe the solar panels were wired wrong. They don't know. We're going to go back to that. But yeah, it's a lien on the property. So does the seller understand that, hey, you're going to have to pay these liens, right? Is that clear in your contract? That comes out of their price. And then the buyer's credits that you're agreeing to, right? Novations are great. They should be $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 deals, but a lot of times we've seen, clients or somebody on their team that do not understand what they're agreeing to in these counters back and forth. And of course,
I had a
closing
client.
costs.
We had a client one time that had accepted an offer from a buyer, and he did not read the entire offer. And within the offer, the buyer had asked for a $15,000 credit from the seller. And so then when we get to closing, he's agreed to that credit on the seller's behalf. So that is coming out of his fee, and he didn't know that. Yeah. And he ended up walking away with no money at the end of that deal at all. He actually brought, I think, $150 to closing to get it done because he didn't read the contract or factor in a credit.
Yeah, so these things happen.
Problems and solutions, not knowing when or how to file memorandums. I like to remind people that memorandums are not how investors get paid. They are just an extra measure to ensure that you do get paid when things go sideways. We've talked about a lot of those things. Improper use of the attorney, in fact, maybe the wrong agent trying to backdoor, maybe the wrong title company. Those are situations where you might be looking to file a memorandum to protect your interest. So what to know about memorandums is really important. These are clouds on titles. These are not full-on liens. This is not like a UCC lien where it's going to prevent somebody from closing. Clouds on title can be closed around as exceptions to the title policy.
Yeah, man, I think this is something to stop on, because this is the thing I see the most in all of the groups on Facebook and the Discord channel, all the shit. People think memorandums are the end-all be-all. They are not. They are a speed bump. They're there to slow the title company down. People like, I had a memorandum on it and the seller sold it anyways. Yeah, it's just a thing. It's just a sign tacked to the tree in the town square that says, hey, Joey has an interest in this property. There are two types of memorandums or clouds or notice of contract. There's unilateral and there's bilateral. Unilateral means just you signed it. Bilateral means I signed it and the seller signed it. Those have to be notarized. That holds actual weight. Far more than because I can post on Brandon's house or Nick's house. I have an interest in it. That all it's going to do is make the title company stop, call you, and go, hey, what are you doing?
Oh, and the reason that they're encouraged or used in novations is because traditional lenders, as normally our buyers are using in novations, won't lend if there's that cloud on title. They want all of those liens to be cleared. But just because novations are optimal for reaching retail buyers doesn't mean that you're not still going to get some cash buyers. And those cash buyers can close around things like that as an exception to the title policy. So it's good to just know how, when to use them and what they do.
Yeah. There are 3,100 counties. Somebody can Google that and check me. It's been a little bit. I don't remember the exact number, but 3,100 counties. 50 states, and they all love to do shit differently.
Everything is different in every county.
It's mind-boggling that there's some podunk county in Alabama that is not online yet. We file memorandums and notices and all the stuff every single day between our TC company and the title company. There are places where you can't, man, and you just can't always do it without mailing it in or having somebody walk it in there. So Always good to know that.
And it's a good thing to know up front. If you're doing a novation and you think there's a possibility you might need to file a memorandum for some reason, go ahead and figure out whether or not you're going to be able to do that in that state before it becomes a problem. But ultimately, if you set good expectations with your seller and you have good title contacts, you can avoid filing a memorandum at all. The seller knows what's going on. There's a case study in here that I'll get into where that is exactly what happened. They had great expectations with the seller and they didn't need to file a memorandum even though they had to pivot the entire deal. Seller was like, cool, you told us exactly how this was happening, and they did it.
Yeah, the memorandum is in there, obviously, right, because we're removing ourselves from the contract. Typically, we don't have to have those filed with our clients because we're using a title company that we know, like, and trust. So we can save you that expense and that aggravation. You cannot file a memo if your contract is expired. You don't have a valid contract anymore.
Unless you want to go to court.
Yeah, you will lose. And let me just jump back to contracts a little bit. And I know we're running a little bit long here, guys. I'm sorry. I just want to give you as much as we can. Your contract is a legal binding agreement between you and the seller. I get that people understand that, but I don't know how many times I get a contract and it says that you're giving $1, $10, $100 in EMD, and that money never gets to the title company. If you are putting that in your contract, you have to send it to the title company. You have to. Like, you can roll the dice on it, but again, you're playing roulette, because if somebody ever contests your contract, if the seller gets an attorney, the first thing that attorney is going to do is call the title company and say, hey, is this EMD in place? Have you received it? Yeah? Great. I want a receipt of the date and time that it was received. You're done. Like, you have no standing. And that's okay if you just want to walk away from your contract, but you cannot enforce it if you do not do what you said you were going to do in the contract, because your position now is, hey, I'm going to force Nick to close on this deal. I'm going to show him how big my balls are. Well, his attorney's going to be like, bro, get the fuck out of here. You're an amateur. So either take it out of your contract, or if it's in there, make sure that it actually goes. So yeah,
cool. And there are obviously some situations where it is great to file it. That's why this is built into the way that this is taught. If an agent is trying to backdoor you, great opportunity for you to file a memorandum. If a seller starts acting squirrely, or like all of a sudden they don't know what's going on or they want to back out, great opportunity, obviously, before it expires. If you're doing significant monetary improvements before closing, if you're putting money into the property aside from just like the listing and the photos and the basics, you might want to make sure your interest is additionally protected. And then, if you have to modify your contract for any reason to remove your attorney in fact, I hate to say that this happens, but it does happen where, documents get in the wrong hand and a lender says, no, we're not going to do this. And the contract has to pivot to another type of deal or go direct to seller for some reason. That's another great time to, file a memorandum. So again, it's a tool there in the process to help ensure you do get paid if something seems like it's going sideways, but is not exactly how you get paid.
So great reasons to file, when to file your memorandum, but also, again, on the flip side too, man, don't file a memorandum on every single property. One, it's expensive. If you do 100 files and it's, $100, what's that, 10 grand? Somebody do the math. That's a lot of money over the course of the year. But if you don't close on it, you need to release these memos, right? I know, I personally do not believe in the theory that some of these coaches teach. Just file a memo and then 4 years down the road, make them come back to you and pay you $5 grand. I feel like that's pretty shitty.
There's a statute in a lot of states too. Yeah. After like 5 years, a lot of times they're not even enforceable anymore.
Right. But yeah, so if you file a memo, you have to remove it if you can't close on it.
This one's quick.
Yeah, documents and getting them into the wrong hands. I feel like we've talked about this a little bit. If you don't understand your document, they're instructions to the title company, right? So I always tell people, use third grade language. Don't try to act like you're really smart. Most of us aren't, right? Let's talk at a level that everybody understands, because if you're confusing in there and trying to use words and you use them incorrectly, what you're going to get out at the end is not what you were expecting, and you're going to have a problem and a ton of questions, and that's going to slow you down from doing what you're supposed to do. So yeah, again, problems that we see, we've talked about this. Title gets contract one with the buyer. They should not. Your novation agreement, right, indemnification gets sent to the lender. That should not. That doesn't have anything to do with the lender. This is the whole reason that we do a novation, is to separate out our investor kind of action with the retail. Agents don't understand their role. My goodness, too many hands, not enough coordination. But the other thing is just, we see investors, they get excited, they watch a video, novations are going to be awesome, which they are. But then they call up a title company or an agent. It's just verbal diarrhea, right? I'm doing all these things and it's a replacement of contract, and they're all excited. And the agent on the other end is like, what the fuck are you talking about? Do this. You want to practice, go into Walmart at 10 o'clock at night and just grab somebody in an aisle and explain to them what novations are. If you can explain that to them in like a minute, you got it down. If you can't, you do not, right? You should not be the person on the phone trying to explain it to a title company, because you're gonna kill your deal. So yeah, know your paperwork. Do not have verbal diarrhea. Do not over explain when talking to a title company, whether it's an assignment, a sub to a novation, whatever it is. And yeah, man, just don't dick with all this stuff. Just get yourself a transaction coordinator that is experienced and knows what they're doing.
So I threw a couple case studies in here, and then we'll switch over to some Q&A. This was a deal that we did recently where the attorney in fact document was not executed properly. The seller actually wasn't granting anybody authority because the attorney in fact template had not been filled in whatsoever. The investor then used that to try to sign a contract with the buyer incorrectly. They signed it as their entity as the seller instead of the seller as the seller. So it made it look like a double close, but they couldn't double close because the end buyer they had an FHA loan. And FHA has a 90-day seasoning requirement, so you can't have those closings happen back to back. The buyer went direct to seller. The investor got looped out of the deal because of the incorrect paperwork. He also didn't have good expectations with the seller. So the seller, wasn't willing to pivot with him and make sure that he got paid. And then there was, lack of understanding of how New York as an attorney state operated. The deal ended up being unsalvageable, but it could have been if the proper steps were taken earlier. And even though this was a deal that we worked on, a lot of the things were coming to us after they were already executed, rather than, hey, this might be a potential problem. Can you double check this and make sure I did this right before I get everybody to sign it? That's what we're here for too. Before we even have some of that paperwork, we're willing to say, hey, this looks good. Hey, this doesn't look good. I would tweak this. We're not legal professionals, but we see these contracts all day.
Yeah, I mean, and kudos for all of you for being here and paying and trying to get some education and figure out how to do these things right, because so many people are out there watching one TikTok video and they're like, I'm going to go out and do this. And one, they're fucking stuff up. They're not going to get paid. They're harming sellers. Buyers are getting pissed. Just try to do it right.
This is another one we did where the agent ended up backdooring the investor and had the seller sign the contract with the buyer directly. So problem there was that the agent didn't understand their role. They didn't understand that they were supposed to go directly to the investor to sign for the seller. So the attorney in fact form was not used properly. The investor also let the buyer pick the closing attorney. Closing attorney did not like how this deal was being done. The agent had disclosed the underlying contract with the seller to the attorney, who then said, oh, that underlying contract has to be canceled before we can close this contract with the buyer, which obviously put the investor at risk, because if they canceled their underlying contract with the seller, they had nothing to file a memo on to protect their interest. They had no way of salvaging it. Ultimately, what happened is that the transaction coordinator on the deal at Easy was able to utilize our Georgia attorney to call the attorney that was closing the deal and explain the legalities of the novation and the repercussions if they didn't do it, and we got the deal closed.
Yeah, I mean,
connections.
Shameless plug for us, but we have an attorney in the office sitting here every single day that can jump on the phone and do these kinds of things. But also, here is an example of where having a local attorney would have solved this problem, because if you have a flat fee agent, that buyer's agent is not going to them because they're not going to answer the phone. They are literally just an administrator. They're just listing the property. That's it. So, you've left this void, right, for you and for the seller. So that, of course, that buyer's agent's going to go directly to the seller.
This is the last one. Buyer refused to use any other title company other than theirs. It was the only offer client had on the deal. This is a really good one because the investor had a really good relationship with the agent. And even though the title company was refusing to pay the investor, the agent was pushing them, hey, no, this is how it's supposed to happen. This ended up changing to a retail deal. So the investor removed themselves from the contract and put the seller under contract with the buyer directly with a special stipulation that the seller would pay the investor a fee. And the only reason that this worked was because the investor had good rapport and expectations with the seller. The seller knew he was listing it to a third-party purchaser and that he was only entitled to a certain amount. And he didn't give pushback because he had rapport. And so again, the relationship you have with your seller matters, the relationship you have with the agent matters, the title company that you pick matters. And this one's closing next week. So you can avoid pretty much all of these ticking time bombs, control your paperwork, set good expectations, stay proactive.
Yeah. So, yeah, skipping this step.
Skipping ahead because I'm like, what, Q&A.
That's okay. Yeah,
Q&A.
I want to make sure. Yeah, man, it's gonna cost you money, right? You're missing deadlines. It's gonna cost you these deals. Hire a transaction coordinator. Do not be wasting your time. Making sure the right document is scanned to the right person. We are incredibly cheap. We will save you far more deals than, Anyways, yeah, you gotta have a system. You gotta have somebody in place that you can just turn these contracts over to and let them handle it. So, work for your business, work on your business instead of in your business. So, yeah, I mean, for us, again,
Shameless plugs. Sorry.
Shameless plugs, right? I'm going to tell you, we've done over 8,000 deals, closed over $500 million in properties, and made our clients, I think the last count was $56 million. So, we can handle this for you guys if you would like. Certainly every deal type, every single state. All of our TCs are in-house. Nobody's working at home. There's no virtual assistants. These are all highly paid, U.S.-based, Chattanooga-based people right here in our office. They're all certified. It takes 2 to 3 months for them to get trained. You're not going to get that from some random Fiverr VA. It's just not going to happen. Great communication, all of the different things. Of course, like I said, we have our own title company and attorney in-house. Plus, now we're up to like 800 title companies across the country that we're partnered with. We'll be happy to review your contracts. And, again, not attorneys, but we've done 8,000 of these. We will tell you where the weak spots are in your contracts, and just the communication that we will provide for you and your team is just going to be unmatched. And then also, my partner, COO Heather, she does quarterly and yearly breakdowns, not only of all the statistics across the board for all of our clients, but your stats and how you stack up with everybody else. So that's it. I mean, that's what we do. Hopefully you guys got some value out of this. This is, Q&A. This is where we're at. So
that was a freaking masterclass right there.
Thank you, man.
Man, I hope Brandon was taking notes, because that was we're learning all kinds of stuff as well. That was incredible.
This is why I bring in Hannah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hannah. That was freaking awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's open it up for. I believe this is recorded. It will be uploaded to the vault probably later this week or next week. So make sure you go back and rewatch this. But let's open it up for some questions real quick, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Parker, what's up, buddy? Would you be able to copy and paste?
Parker said, would you be able to copy and paste in the chat of the PSA language that was shown in an earlier slide? Are you talking about the attorney in fact language about what you can and can't do?
Yeah, it was when you were talking about separating the AIF from the PSA, and there was the slide right before that. I think it was a little excerpt, and I just didn't know if that was important or not.
Yeah, Nick, Brandon, if you guys want, we'll just download this too as a PDF, and you guys can have it and post it in the group.
Let's go. Yeah, can you post it in the Facebook group?
Yeah, we'll post it here later today. Cool. What about the end?
Parker, I'll email you too.
Thank you.
What about when the end buyer wants to pick their own title company? Yeah, it sucks. It's a bad idea.
Call them, vet them, put them through the ringer of the questions. Have they done one? Do they understand it? If they don't, counter the seller's offer or the buyer's offer. And if they don't, move on to another buyer. Most of the time, that title company in the buyer's contract is the buyer's agent's title company, not the buyer's.
Yeah.
Are they really going to lose their commission over a title company?
Yeah. And here's the thing too, guys. On a counter, has anybody ever countered and said they want to pay you more? No. Right? Everything is give to get in our business, right? Yeah, okay, cool. You want a $4,000 reduction? Great. I'll give you that. My counter is we'll do the reduction. We're going to close at my title company where we've already started everything. So that's how I handle it. I'm sure some of you guys have other ways. Last part of slide. Title company.
Share the list of page title questions.
I'm not sure.
You mentioned that you had like a couple pages of stuff when you're vetting a title company of questions, and didn't know if that was what I was referring to.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. I got you. I'm sorry. I was listening to you, but reading Kayla's message. Yeah, we can we can probably put something together for you there. Everything's on. Favorite e-filing option for memorandums that work for most counties. What do we use? Simplifile?
We use Simplifile. There's a few other ones out there. There are some counties that don't accept or acknowledge these, like North Carolina, for example, like you can file one, but good luck finding an attorney who will file it, because if another attorney sees it, they're just going to close around it anyways, because they're not really recognized anymore. They're just like kind of a joke because somebody dilly-dallied around in North Carolina a few years ago. And so like it's
Also, there are some
Yeah.
counties where only a title company can file.
Well, and like, yeah, there are some counties in New York you can't file at all. Like, unless you want to pay like $6,000 for attorney fees and go back and forth for 3 months trying to get them to file it, it's just not going to happen.
No, that's wild. EMD required, yeah. On my wholesale contracts, it's been off for 10 years. It's not been on there. EMD is not legally required.
On the
for-
A to B agreement.
Yes. Yeah, we collect from our buyers. But yeah, EMD, this is like an urban myth. EMD is not required to make your contract binding. State Supreme Courts have showed, you guys can Google this on your own, that the agreement, the consideration, your signature is consideration enough to purchase the property and bind it. However, agents want it, right? So yes, to answer your question, EMD, it's going to be tough on a novation to get that past an agent.
And I want to clarify too that, you know, if you're putting EMD on your underlying contract with the seller, then it's implying that you're going to need to open title before you have a buyer, which isn't always a bad thing, but not everybody wants to do, because the reality is 50% of deals die. And so when you're opening title before you have a guaranteed buyer, you're on the hook for that search too. So a lot of people wait and feel out what kind of traction they're getting before they open it. While we as a company, you know, opted to remove EMD from our underlying contract with the seller, we still work with many investors who do. And so I don't want to like deter anybody from what they've been taught, but that's kind of the why removing it is helpful, is because it prevents you having to open title till you have a buyer and defaulting on the contract terms, unless maybe it says EMD is due by the expiration of this contract, right? And you can put it up later. Still, you just start adding in terms that create a little bit more work than necessary. And I just always say, unless the seller asks for it, why waste your money?
Yeah.